Okay, so welcome everyone to the first office hour. And yes, this will be a recurring, hopefully a monthly event, sort of in between the community's meetings, just to devote some time to a special topic that can't find a place in those communities meetings. And for instance, today that is one of our playbooks, and we'll take requests as well for the topic. And that could be the first half hour or the whole hour. But we were also thinking this could be the place where people might have questions and then we can answer them on the spot. That's why we're calling it an office hour. And today's topic is that outreach planner, which I presented at a communities meeting in June, I believe. And we wanted to go deeper into how that works and have also an example, because we didn't have time back then to show an example of that. And we can talk a little bit about how to use it in your communities as well. So oftentimes in our communities, we just use our own channels. That is our own platform or our own email lists, our own Facebook page or group or what have you. In Wayland, that would be like the MassEnergize Wayland channels that are entirely in our control and that we built up over all these years. But of course, our communities are home to many, many, many other channels with many more people on them. And we really need to start using those as well if we're not yet doing so. And when we use those, we reach many more people, obviously, and we're going beyond the choir. We also raise the relevance of climate action in spaces where usually that's not even discussed. So we change the culture. We also can reach beyond the current occasion or the event or the action that we're pushing with a particular campaign, because we will be sending people to our MassE platforms as well. And also we build resilience because we create more interconnectivity in our communities, which is always a good thing to have. Also, it saves time and work because many of those channels have been built over many years by the hard work of other people. So if we can jump on those, of course, we can instantly have that kind of outreach and we don't have to do that work. And usually, actually, for 100% in Wayland at least, there's no cost for using those channels. So it's a win-win and a no-brainer, really. And so what do I mean by channels? Could be anything. And really, when you sit down with your group and you start investigating the networks in your town, just think of anything and everything. It does not have to be climate action related. So for instance, a weekly e-blast by the local Ultimate Frisbee Club. We have one of those here in Wayland. Or a church's monthly newsletter, or some business, their Twitter account. The town pool here in Wayland, believe it or not, has something like 2,000 people on their email list, etc., etc. So the world's your oyster where these channels are concerned. And what's very important is to realize that each channel is unique and to really take that seriously. They all have a unique audience. They all have a unique topic or a slant. They can be fun or entertaining, or they can be political. They can be nerdy or very competitive. Then they also each have a content format that they use. So some of them are perfect for these short one-liners, Twitter, for instance, obviously. Others are heavy on visuals. If there's an Instagram account, then visuals are central to that. And some of them have long slabs of text and no visuals at all. We have a newsletter here in Wayland that is just text. I think they have a policy against pictures. And then each channel, of course, has a certain regularity and deadlines. You have to be aware of those too as you make the rounds and look for these channels. And also each channel has a way of accessing them. And that can be through a gatekeeper, or that could be through self-posting by your own organization. And so what do I mean by gatekeepers? Well, when a channel is not open to you, So for instance, a church's newsletter, you have to give the content to the gatekeeper of that channel, and that person has access and then passes the content on. They will not give you access to their email lists. That's why they're a gatekeeper. And these can be channels that are, these are channels that are usually not ours, not yours. And what's important then, if there's a gatekeeper, is to maintain a strong relationship with them. Start a relationship, build it, and maintain it. And if that channel is, reaches a lot of people, it will be worth it. When you ask them to put content on, make it a personal ask, because they too are your neighbors. And again, you're building that interconnectivity in your community. And you should always give them a reason why they should forward your content, because they may be a ultimate frisbee group. Why should they put something on, why should they send on an email or an e-blast to their members, right? And luckily or not, climate change affects everything and every topic. You can make it clear that there is a relationship and that this affects their members as well. So sometimes there's not a gatekeeper, but a moderator. And that's usually the case with social media. And sometimes there's these collaborative gatekeepers, and that's when you're collaborating on an event. When you're collaborating on an event with the town or a business, they too have, of course, these member lists that they can reach out to. Ellen, you had a question?
Yeah, I just want to say, what I would say is, while we can often make the connection to a group, sometimes it seems obvious and then sometimes it just doesn't work. So I just, I'll just use the garden club as an example. You
Mm-hmm.
would think the garden club would be great. They're very good about promoting things maybe related to gardening. But if it's not directly related to gardening, they ended up recently changing their policy, saying we're not putting stuff in our newsletter that isn't directly related to gardening. So it was
Yeah,
a good channel for us for a while, and then they changed their policy. So that also can happen even with the most ones that seem like they're a perfect
yeah,
connection for us.
yeah. Because the gatekeepers are like local folks, your neighbors. It's good to have good etiquette with them. And for instance, when you know about a channel that they are heavy on graphics and they only allow one line of text, then that's what you have to exactly give them. Don't give them a long slab of text that then they have to whittle down to one sentence to then put on their channel. They're not going to do that. It's just going to. So, and in the playbook and in the example, you'll see that the way we, one of the parts of the toolkit is the way we organize the content that is to be moved into these channels into separate buckets. And so when you are reaching out to a channel that is high on graphics but low on text, it will be exactly available to the volunteer who needs to do that. And so the playbook really organizes the content, the volunteer, and then the time as well. And thing on social media is to definitely plan ahead. So that's where the planner comes in mind, because you can really oversaturate social media very quickly. And those moderators, if there's a moderator on that social media group, they'll kick you off. And that would not be a good thing. Or people just get annoyed, right? And again, it's good to assign in your group, in your local group, in your organization, a relationship manager for each of the channels. Because then that is each time the person who makes the ask for every event, and then in 6 months' time, another event, etc. And it's always the same person. So the gatekeeper will be more likely to say yes to that person. And so I'm going to show you very quickly, very soon, what that planner looks like. It's a way of organizing an overview of the network of all these local, hyper-local outreach channels in your community. It's also a way for each campaign or event to select those channels that you want to use, because very rarely do all the channels apply. It's a way to plan and schedule in time your campaign from the day of before the event and of the event even till, whatever your time scale is. And it's also a way to delegate and assign specific team members to specific channels and specific weeks. So great way of delegating the work. And then it's also a way to keep an overview of the network, to keep your overview of the network up to date, because the planner evolves with time. And so every time something changes in the channel, you put that in that spreadsheet, and you will know next time, you know, the deadline has changed, or the email has changed because the gatekeeper has changed, etc. So we've used this planner in Wayland now for several years, and it's been used elsewhere as well. And people have loved it, and it seems to really fulfill its job. The example I'm going to show you and our planner, our toolkit, already assumes that you know the channels in your community, that you've already done that inventory, which needs to be done every 4 months or so, because it's a very evolving field, especially where social media is concerned as well. Where to find it? You just go to MassEnergize.org. You click on services, you'll see playbooks and tools. Click on that, you will land up on this page. And here it is, the outreach planner. Just click on that, and then you have to fill out a little form to say that you're interested in this playbook. And then we will email you a link to that playbook, and it will look like this. So this is in the toolkit. This is the example right there. This is the Black Earth campaign. And we have a little bit about our campaign strategy, how we did that, who were the showrunners, the timing of it, and then the goals. We wanted 30 to sign up that were on the waiting list to activate, and then we wanted to keep promoting it and get to 200 by the end of the year. We did not get there. That was overly ambitious. But what we did then, we had our showrunners. We sat around my kitchen table, and we put together all the content. And we knew that we were going to need all kinds of content, all types of content. It was all the same content, same campaign, etc. But we knew we needed pictures. We knew we needed short blurbs, long blurbs. We wanted an article in the newspaper, which is a 500-word text, etc. And we created all that on the spot. So here are all the content, and this is just a short inventory of that content. Because we knew we were going to hit Facebook several times and the same channel several times, you can't just say the same thing each time. You want to change that up. You want to really mix it up and change the hook. For instance, your first hook might be, want to get rid of smelly trash, you know, put the organics into a separate bin and have it picked up curbside, and your trash won't be smelly anymore. And then the second week, we might say something, hey, you want to do something about climate change, the carbon footprint of methane in landfills is, et cetera, et cetera. So we created several blurbs. And there were some events in this campaign as well that we wanted people to go to. And then there were several infographics. So now let's have a look at the planner itself. And in the toolkit, we have a template which is blank. But we also have this example. So this is that same campaign that this is the content for. So a quick view of how this planner works. There's a lot of stuff in here. And this is, again, a great exercise with your team to do, to go on Facebook and find these groups, to think about, hey, you know, the Children and Parents Association must have a newsletter, right? You go to their website and you find this stuff. So first of all, we have our channels themselves. And this is now an old spreadsheet. So this thing has evolved. It looks very different now. And we have found many, many more channels in the meantime. But what we do is we just line them up here and we put the links in if there are links. Don't forget your own channels. EnergizeWayland.org is an important channel. It needs to be here as well. But then there are a ton of channels that we have found, and not all of them are for this campaign relevant. So if they're not relevant, what we've done is we, for instance, the Wayland Garden Club, even for food scraps, they would not have done it for us. We knew that in advance. So we deleted them out. We didn't take we scratched them out. We did not delete them because in the next campaign, when we do something about ecological landscaping, they may be interested. So we don't want to delete them and forget about them. We want to recycle this very same spreadsheet for the next campaign. So we just crossed them out. But those that were not crossed out were relevant. And so here you see again, it's the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Dudley Pond Association. Then we have Wayland Community for Social Justice. We sent this to them as well. And then we have, for instance, Wayland government channels. Like I said, any channel will do. We have, of course, the houses of worship, which are taking on more of a climate responsibility. So they're always great. So, and then in the rest of this, we have some more information about them. What medium they are they Facebook? Are they a newsletter? Then you can put some information in about what their reach is. The Energize Wayland newsletter, for instance, has 700 people on it. Our main channel, our most important channel, is this Facebook Wayland bulletin board or forum, a community forum that has 3,000 people on it. Very important channel. And then we have some information about special information that applies to them. And for instance, for this one, they have on that Facebook group, it's a closed group, they have a policy that you cannot post something twice. So you cannot post an event and then next week post the same event in a separate post. But there's a workaround. Of course, what you do is you ask your volunteers to comment on it, and that bumps the post up to the top of that feed. You can't, liking it is great too, but that doesn't do the bumping. So we actually have a separate playbook available as well about social media, and that has these little tips about Facebook, Instagram, etc., how to best use those. And then we have some information about how we post to them. So sometimes there's a gatekeeper. And then we mentioned that gatekeeper, for instance, here is Brian A. And Kay is myself, Kat, is the relationship manager. So Kay will make the ask of Brian A. to move that content, that campaign onto their members. But oftentimes you can self-post, and it's great for your team members to be members of these groups, especially in social media. If they are members of these groups, they can self-post. Sometimes, like for instance, with the Wayland Dads, it looks on their Facebook group that you have posted, but it really has not gone through. It needs approval. And I found with some of these groups, and the Wayland Dads is one of them, that they will not approve it unless you ask them separately. So again, E is Ellen. Ellen will reach out to the Wayland Dads and say, hey, I just suggested this post. Can you please approve it? They will approve it, and then you can comment on it to bump it up again. So it's all these little tricks that you have, all of them handy on this sheet. And the great thing is that it doesn't have to be one person who has all this information in their heads, right? It's the whole team can work with this. If that one person who has it all in their heads goes on holidays for a couple of months, then you can't do anything, or you don't have all these details at your fingertips. So there's many other things you can add here. And everyone who's used this sheet, you can just use a template and adjust it to your needs.
Which is, one of the points Kat made, I just want to really emphasize, which is when we post stuff to social media, what we've learned about getting people to comment on it being really important for bumping it up is really, really worth putting an exclamation point next to. And when we get, Kat will show you here, when we look at the weeks, we get people to volunteer to do stuff. So then who's ever running that campaign will just remind me like, okay, this week, I just posted everyone who said they're going to comment, do it in the next day or two, and then just mark it in the spreadsheet that you did it. And it's really, this is a great thing to plug volunteers into because it literally took me less than 10 minutes. And
Mhm.
I did it on 5 different platforms. And we're always looking for things that we can plug volunteers into that doesn't take a lot of their time, or they can do it at night or in the morning, whatever. So most of this spreadsheet, I think what we love about it, and we've used it a lot, Kat, for a lot of years now, is that we can pretty quickly sit down with someone in a meeting and say, okay, we're running this campaign. And so you're going to work on these rows and, at these weeks, or, you're going to plug in here and there. And then it's usually very, very clear what they need to do.
Yeah.
So,
And so, for instance, let's take the Wayland bulletin board, for instance. So I was the one in week 1, 8 weeks before an event, before the deadline, for instance, of the sign up or a webinar about Black Earth compost. I was the one who sent this out to, who posted this, self-posted it on the Wayland bulletin board. And so I put my name in here as we planned this out. I put my name in here and I said, I'm going to send 1.2.2, which means in our content, that would have been this one, way too long for Facebook. But so that gives you an idea. If I had given this to some other volunteer, many of these volunteers, by the way, do not help with events or anything. They don't have the time, but they love being on Facebook, for instance. So they volunteered just to do this. So I just plug M in here. That's Michael, let's say, and he knows on week 3 that he should post content 1.2.3 on this Wayland bulletin board, which, you know, would be in a comment to this post. And so this is all blank in the beginning, or it's all white. And then every time they do it, they make it red, they make it green to let us know that they've done it. So that the one who's really running the show, I would, on Fridays, for instance, I would look at the sheet and like, oh, well, let's say Jane here in week 4 has forgotten to do her thing. I'll quickly do it for her then. So for instance, what happened here is this channel, which is a very important channel here, Wayland Moms, look, 890 members. I forgot about that. So it didn't get green. So that was a big oops. We lost that. We forgot about that channel. Some of these channels have their quirks, and they can be really good quirks. For instance, this particular group is a very intense group on Facebook. And so when Michael posted in week 2 about this, they just ran their own discussion. None of our volunteers had to go in there and repost it or bump it up because they themselves were keeping that discussion going. And that's why I myself in week 5 and Michael in week 7 decided we're not needed here. We're not going to do anything here. And that is basically it. That's how it works. And it works really well. And volunteers know exactly what to post, when to post it. They can come here and make it green and say, I've done it. And that feels good to them as well.
One thing that's not on here that I know we've put on in subsequent ones, so there's a local community group and they have a newsletter and there's a deadline for that newsletter that you need to get it in by a certain date. Sometimes you
Yes.
have it in there, the newsletter goes out the third Monday. That's really important to note because sometimes we've blown it by like a few days. And it was like, we wish we had known that. So
Yeah. Yes.
I just met with the Council on Aging yesterday locally, and I know they need to get things by the 10th of the month and for it to go out. So Kat, I just had a long hour call with Julie, so I now know much more and I can fill in what the council agent has between the newsletter and the weekly blast and other stuff that they do.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that was learned the hard way where a couple times we missed it by
Yeah.
a day.
And sometimes you have a week. For instance, we ran an EV pop-up event on Saturday, and we knew on Monday, the Monday before that Saturday, that we could do it. So we had a week to do it. So we're not going to touch all these channels. We just chose the 3 biggest ones and concentrated on that, and that was just fine.
Helen?
So I love it, but I am struggling to think of, besides Medfield Environment Action, who would be willing to put our content in their newsletter.
Oh, well, let's just go down our list because I think you'd be surprised. So, first of all, you have a local Facebook group, right?
Yep.
All right. So, and it turns out there's more than one Facebook group. So for Wayland, it's Wayland Community Forum that has thousands and thousands of people. But we also have the Moms group, the Busy Parents Zero Waste, and the Wayland Dads is another one that we use a lot.
Mhm.
The Constituent Die Hard. So the next thing I would do is just Facebook groups.
Yep.
That is not too hard. Um, and then you have lots of houses of worship, I'm guessing,
Yep.
right? So that's a whole category. And then you have schools. The
But
schools,
like with our houses of worship, like the newsletter I get from mine does not have any community content in it at all.
I think that maybe it's worth contacting them.
Mhm.
Sometimes the houses of worship we've found sometimes have like a green team or something like that,
Mhm.
or sometimes we've had mixed success. They're just different, but
Yep.
it's also, I think this is changing. We're starting to see houses of worship get more involved in climate issues. I think it's worth trying them. I really do. And then there, so a lot of houses of worship, school groups, um, Facebook groups. There are other parent groups sometimes that are not totally schools groups. Um, um, League of Women Voters, maybe. They've had sort of mixed luck with that, I would say. But I think the other thing that's not on our list that we've recently, because this is old, we have our Human Rights, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee now in Wayland, and I've met with them, and they in Wayland, there's a very, very active listserv of Chinese families, and we need to add that to our list because they're very, very connected. There's the Wayland Dems, the Democratic group, and I don't know if they're on this list because this is a little old cat,
This
but
is a really old list.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wayland Dems is another group for us that we send out to. So I think it's a really good discovery process for who's in your town, and you just need to. So that might be like politically active people, schools, houses of worship, parents. Gardening is always like a monster. There probably is a garden club in Medfield, I'm guessing. Um,
And there
and
could be businesses. I mean, I don't have any in this example, but there may be businesses who are quite climate conscious and want to be because their clients are. And if you have an event, they will gladly pass that on to their clients as well.
Uh, and the farmers market's also on that list, which is
Yeah.
different kind of thing, which is we try to be present there periodically. That's we
Yeah.
can't be there all the
And they
time.
have a very popular newsletter. Then also don't forget individuals, which we
Right.
call influencers. We have some individuals who we know have email lists with 300 people on them. So individuals too, you can put them on your list as well here. Very important to have a good gatekeeper relationship with them, of course. So that can be powerful.
In town, who really led the effort for the rail trail. Larry probably had 1,500 to 2,000 people on his listserv.
Yeah.
So we didn't use him all the time, but then when there was something that was really specific, Larry was willing to send it out. Yep.
Your local library needs to be on here as well. In this tool, in the spreadsheet, you should also put all those media, your print media, collect where they keep their, what their deadlines are. They may also have a Facebook page and push it out through that Facebook page. And for instance, our town crier, our Wayland town crier, which was print media, which we lost, like so many print media, they're going out of business or they're going totally online. But that was very powerful to get. Every other week we would have something in the town crier, something new, something fresh about the same thing, but always a fresh thing. And of course, those media love your content because they don't have to write it. You send it to them with a beautiful picture, they'll stick it on the front page if you have, again, a good relationship. So, and then there's a couple of other the Wayland e-newsletter, for instance, is big, very important. And that has a hard deadline of Sunday night, which I always miss. But and that's always a loss when we miss it. So you can keep that here as well. And also with regard to all those channels, when you get their newsletter, there may not be anything about climate change in it because they're not a climate change group, like a church or a business. But when you send them your content, you make it their business, right? That's what you do. That's the thing. And especially the Children and Parents Association. When I write to them and say, look, we have an event coming up, I know that many of your young parents who are your members, they are concerned about climate change. So you should put this in your newsletter too. That's how you do it. And 70% say yes, of course. And you give it to them again in the right format, the format they like, so they don't have to do any more work. You do not embed pictures in your email to them. You attach it so it's easy for them to pick it up and stick it in their newsletter instead of having to cut it out of your. All these little tricks really help. You have to make it so that it is super, super easy for them to just copy paste, send it off. Otherwise, they're not gonna, oftentimes won't do it.
I like the concept of spending the time to do the discovery, figure out what it is, and then being deliberate about, even if you're just running through your list every time, which ones are going to work, and then having them, because pretty much, well, it's in our heads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't have a big list.
And when it's on this, then you can plug in people to help you, Megan. When it's in your head, like this way, we have a quick meeting and it's like, okay, I'm willing to do these. And then I will say, Kat has written a lot of the content because she's so great at that, like Patricia, the social media posts. So, and the blurbs. So that takes someone to write it. But then when it's written, other people can send them out. And I mean, I think of 3 or 4 people, Kat, that like to help us in this way.
Yeah. Some of these volunteers that we have helping us with outreach, they only do this. That's it. That's that volunteer pool. And I know that when it's time to do it, to start outreaching about a campaign, I send them an email. They know how it works because they've used it before. We don't change this thing on them every other week. So it always looks the same. And they're like, oh yeah, there's my name. There's what I should send and when. And they love doing it. They feel, as volunteers, they feel wanted and needed as well. So, but when I think teams, I think, for instance, sports clubs, sports teams, they can get very competitive. So here you have my husband's softball team, and then the softball team he used to belong to here in Wayland. They're very competitive because one team stole a member of the other team. So when they meet, they're quite competitive, and they communicate with each other a lot. So one could create a team, the other could create a team on our MassEnergize platform, and they could compete as to who is the greenest team, right? That's the team function, and that could sort of also plug into this idea of these channels. If they then on the platform start competing as teams, they will also be very happy to, send on word about an event or a campaign. So, and some of them may actually need you to be a member of them. So many of these Facebook groups, I'm a member of the Wayland Moms Facebook group. I'm even a member of the Wayland Dads Facebook group. So, because then of course it becomes easy for me to comment. These are private groups, so they're not open to everyone. And that's sometimes also what your volunteers need to do, is just become a member of this group, or otherwise they can't even comment. But it could be the same for these tighter teams. If you have a church that has a lot of members in it, when you're thinking about that channel, think about, do we know anyone who goes to church there? That person could be the person who makes the ask. And then they're your gatekeeper as well, to get you into that newsletter, for instance. So.
I think this is a great way to organize all the information. I feel a little daunted, and maybe others do too, by the prospect of how much information we need to collect and how we're going to do it, because we have a very, very small team.
Just start with the 10 biggest ones, stick them on there, and that's the beginning. And then as you run campaigns, you'll discover more, and you just keep adding them over time. And then when you're running a big campaign, you look at your channel list and go like, oh, wow, well, we can now reach basically, 50% of people from Natick through this list. So, but it is something that needs to be built over time.
I think it's a great way to organize all of your outreach. So it sounds like it's a fabulous tool. So I look forward to, kind of plugging it in and seeing. With, I think we do have, Megan, through the Sustainable Medfield, you send out a lot of stuff to all the different community groups, don't you? But you just send it to them in the hopes that they'll put it in their newsletter or whatever. Sometimes I think people are just, with some of the newsletters or email lists, they just, for their members, they don't want to be inundating their members with a lot of different emails, and you have to really be careful about that. So Council on Aging is usually pretty good. Now that things are opened up, I will always drop off, colored flyers to them, because they would prefer to do that and have flyers for their in-person attendees than to send something out via email, is kind of the sense that I've gotten from them. There's going to be a new director, so, we'll have to see. As far as businesses go, there's definitely certain businesses in town who are very open to everything that we're doing. So those businesses, I definitely drop off colored flyers to and post, and they have no issue with that. So, but we're not on a whole bunch of email listservs. Would you agree with that, Megan? Yeah, I don't think.
I would say, especially, well, not as a group for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sometimes worth like seeing me get on other people's listservs, because then you can kind of see what they're doing. You get kind of a
Mhm.
beat on them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but and again, not all of them are good fits for every event. But just having kind of the big list means I go, okay, what are we doing this time? And so we
Mhm.
can kind of be in a rush. I will say, if you were to ask Kat, which I'm going to ask her, and I know what I think, which are the most productive channels? I know what I think. What do you think, Kat?
Oh, I can pick out the 5 most productive ones. If you don't have time, you just hit those.
What are they
And
for us? But I think there are certain big ones that are
the
similar for everybody.
yeah, the Children and Parents Association, the Council on Aging, that Facebook group, probably the library one. And if we could get onto it, the farmers market one, which once in a while, if it is food related and local food related, we'll pass that on. Or if we're tabling there, we'll be in that newsletter, and that gets a lot of people. There's actually a way also, and this is like outreach planner toolkit 2.0, is that you can even test your channels and see how effective they are. You could have a Facebook group that has 5,000 people on it, but if no one posts there, it means nothing, right? If no one ever goes there. So it's always good also to look at that, not just how many people are on it, but how many posts were there over the last month. So these are all metrics to keep. A way that in Wayland that we ran an experiment where we did a survey. So the post is something very quick. Take the survey on climate, and then you have to click on a link. You must click that link to go there. And when people click the link, you've had a successful hit. And for each of those channels, we created a separate survey. It's the same survey, but it's a different copy. So at the end of the month, we can look at how many people have filled in the survey on this channel, how many people have filled in the survey on that channel. And then in the end, it's a clear winners is the Wayland e-news. I forgot that one. Of course, that's the top one. You see the clear winners, and then like next time I do a campaign, they're my priorities.
That was the first time we'd ever done that. So it was like a separate QR code kind of thing for that version of the survey. And I think we were surprised how much the Wayland e-news won by. Like it wasn't even close. So that just said to us, we can never miss posting with those guys.
So the whole idea is to map the network in your town, just in your town, and then to have all that information there and use it, but then also to test it out. And also, of course, to create that relationship between your group and all of those groups. And in the end, that's really what climate action demands of us, right? That we all start working together on this thing. So I think this is very helpful. And in Wayland, we really see that interconnectivity growing. An email may have changed, or the gatekeeper may have changed. So when we see that, we make that change right there in that spreadsheet. Then the next time we do an event, we use the old spreadsheet, the updated one, and we copy it. And then we clear it all of that previous event's details. But at least our channels have now all been updated. So that's how it grows with each event. That's how it grows. So it's important to do that.
Not all campaigns do we do like 4 weeks of prep. I think we find for events, the 2 weeks before is the critical time.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really the time. And
Yeah.
too much advanced planning, other than newsletters that only come out once a month, it's mostly not really worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember, the example is about an entire 2 months campaign to get people to sign up and then come to a webinar and come to an event. So that was a big campaign. If it's just one event, you create an event, Facebook event, and you have your people on Facebook share that one from your own Facebook Medfield, Energize Medfield, Sustainable Medfield Facebook group or page. So sharing is even easier that way. They just copy the link of the event and there it is. And they put a little extra like, oh, I love this, I'm going to be there, copy and send it off. So it can be very super easy. Yeah.
One other question. So was this Excel? So it's just an Excel spreadsheet. There's no macros in there. There's nothing in there that we could corrupt or anything like that.
No swivel tables or whatever they're called.
Pivot tables, no
Pivot
pivot.
tables.
Swivel table.
Kat's not a number person, so our Excel spreadsheet is very basic.
Okay,
It's-
just wondering.
It's horizontal and vertical. Great, let's go and have some dinner.
Yeah.
Some of us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Be well.